what happened. I just got hit by a weed whacker.
Hey guys, just want to welcome everybody here. I see some faces came back from the first session, so that's a compliment right there. You didn't screw up too bad. Great. I am really excited to introduce David. I've known him for a number of years, been in some classes with him, some pretty deep stuff we've gone through, not just how to add two and two together. So I know him not just, say, from a academic level, but on a very personal level, and very impressed on how he's cared for his family. And I'm not going to get into his personal story, that's his business, but I really love people that have deep compassion. He's taking care of family members. I'm still not as responsible as him, and I think I'm 62, but anyway, he's a very honoring, good man, and I know he loves the Lord. My name's Ron Sweet. I'm going to be your wingman today, David's wingman. If you guys need anything, let me know. I'll be just over here. I have to let you know that, first, if you got any concerns, let me know. I'll be over there. The emergency exits, if you go out this door, you can go left or right. I'll get you out. Or if it's really bad, just take a chair, throw it through the window.
Go for the window.
I can't imagine what it would be, but restrooms, I hope by now you found them. If not, I'll point. I'm not going to walk you. Most of you guys can go to the bathroom by yourselves.
Oh, darn.
I'm going to ask you a favor. If you got one of these cell phone devices, would you please shut it off right now so it doesn't interrupt? And I think it's out of respect for him. I mean, if you're looking at your phone because you got a Bible note or something you want to look at, please be honoring. I did this job a few years ago, and believe it or not, this little half-hour talk, I don't know about you, David, but I probably put in 25, 30 hours of research. And I know he's a teacher and he loves to research stuff, so I wouldn't be surprised he probably did that or more. So if your attention span's like mine, if you can get a half an hour, this will be the best God moment of your week. I can't go 10 minutes, my wife tells me, like, oh, what was that, squirrel? So please honor him and your people around you by try to make it. Call it a fast. This is a technical fast for the next 40 minutes. Don't look at your cell phone. See what God's going to do in your heart. And get some really good questions, all right? Let's see if we can stump the champ here. So have a few good questions. And with that, I'd just like to open in prayer and just thank God. So, gracious Father, we are so blessed. We are so blessed to live in an age where we have so much access to so much good information. And it was just a few hundred years ago when, before Bibles were printed, and Lord, that it was just trusting word of mouth. And Lord, you kept your message going for hundreds, thousands of years that way. And so as David speaks today, we'd ask that you'd anoint his words, the teaching that you've gifted through many people to bring today. And I pray for the hearts of the men in this group sitting here, that those who have burning issues in their life and are looking for answers would find hope and would find your Spirit encouraging them, because Lord, you are the light of the world, and we all need you. We all have broken lives, and we all need one another. Bless David and bless your word in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, David. All right, so hello everyone. I noticed some familiar faces, so I won't try to use the same jokes as the first time. I'll try to come up with new ones. But ultimately, I want to get to know you guys a little bit. We have a lot of guys in this room, and I was really hoping that we could popcorn very quickly to say your first name, but then also where you work. And the reason why I want to focus on the where you work is because a lot of men, including myself, end up finding maybe some of their gift usage in maybe their 40-hour-a-week type thing. So very briefly, very quickly, if you can, we'll start and just go all the way back.
Hi, my name is John. I work at Walmart in Manitowoc.
Okay.
My name is Mike Tallier. I'm retired, but I work for H.J. Martin and Son out of Green Bay.
My name's Raleigh. I work for Lemon's Water Care in Luxembourg, Wisconsin.
Ron Sweet, I don't work. I just retired.
I'm Bob. I work at Sunshine House.
I'm Dan. I'm a service technician at Blackhawk Heating, Greenville.
My name is Jason. I work at Menards in Sheboygan.
H. I'm self-employed, window washing and yard work.
Dale, I'm employed right now.
Tim working doer and repair.
I'm John, I'm retired right now, too.
Pete Jones, board and search today.
Dan, retired.
Ed, I'm a steam fitter for Shelf Mechanical in Manitowoc. Steve, I'm a wife and business coach with Life and Air.
Peter, I'm retired from Faith Technologies. My name's Paul, I'm retired from the Postal Service.
My name's Larry, I'm a retired pastor, but I also work as a janitor at Plainview Travel Plaza and the Honeycomb. Bruce, Federal Mobile Manitowoc.
Will, we're at ST Fisher in Manchester.
I'm Keith, I work at Heartland Fort Walls.
I'm Mike, and I work at Winger Construction, Campbell's at work.
Clayton, work at Goodwill in Appleton, Sam's Club in Appleton.
Carl, I'm retired, 20 years at Aaron Skelton program.
Andrew, for an electric supply, Appleton.
Bob, retired.
Ian, work at On Foods, Allentown. My name is Othello, and I work at Imperial Supplies.
I'm Hunter, I work in Jack Richardson's and Co. in Liberty.
And several different companies, middle management jobs now. I'm retired and I'm very good at it.
Amen.
Dale retired, but previously from Goodwill, 9 years.
Okay. Thank you for all of that. I will not remember it all, but this is to basically let everyone in the room know that we are all from different walks, we enjoy different things, we're empowered in different ways, so on and so forth. So we'll be jumping into that. Before we do, my name's David. I work at Goodwill, been there for the past 5 years, and I am a teacher trainer of sorts for a variety of different topics for whatever someone needs in their life. All right. So as we get going here, you guys are in the service track for spiritual gifts. And if you were in my first session, which I see a couple faces that you were, we talked a lot about understanding each one. We spent a lot of discussion and a lot of time going through all 7 of these spiritual gifts. Now, before I jump in, I want to see a show of hands. How many people know what the 7, or at least have heard of the 7 spiritual gifts? Okay, all right, so that's fantastic. If you don't know, as we talk through each of them, I'll still give a very brief overview of each one so that we can kind of all be on the same page when we have discussion and such. Okay, so applying spiritual gifts. We start with a verse here. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." So ultimately, God has given you one or more spiritual gifts to serve Him and His kingdom for His glory. Once you've discovered your spiritual gifts, it's time to begin applying them. This session will explore each of the gifts from the perspective of application, strengths and weaknesses, and how to explain to others how best to use your gifting. So when we talk about spiritual gifts, who knows what a gift means in general? Yeah.
Something you don't deserve, pretend to earn.
That's a very good way to explain that. When I think of a gift, I think of, with palms open, something that's given to us, right? Okay, and God has given us each a gift or gifts if He deems so appropriate to use for His glory, ultimately. Okay, and so when we're looking at when I went around the room and I said, well, what do you do? What do you do? We're a bunch of men in the room, and a lot of times our identity is found in kind of like what we do, where we work, at least a big chunk of it. Okay, it's where we spend a lot of our waking hours, and it's where we feel empowered or able to serve or work with others, right? So when we go through these gifts, I want you to know that regardless of whether you work at Walmart, you're retired, you're at Goodwill, Sam's Club, anywhere, your gifts can be used anywhere. So where you work, but not just where you work, but with your family and who you interact with, okay? So 1 Peter 4:10, as each one of us has received a special gift, employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold of grace of God. All right, so just a groundwork. This is where we're going to spend a lot of time today. Most of our class time we'll spend on this slide because it has a variety of different pieces of information on it. So we're going to start just by kind of going over, we have the gifts here. So the 7 gifts. We talk about prophet, servant, exhorter, teacher, giver, leader, and mercy. So of those 7 gifts, each of us is given one of them. And I will say that God can empower each of us in a variety of different ways, but I think there is one wheelhouse type gift that we use day in, day out, where we feel energized and we feel like when we're close with God, we are using it for the right purposes, not for the wrong purposes, because there is a strength and a weakness of each gift. So we're going to start with profit, okay? And I'll leave this slide up. I'm not going to explain the slide, but I'm just going to leave this up. So when we talk about profit, the reason why the rhino is there is because they talk about bluntness, okay? They talk about just kind of saying things how it is, all right? And so when you're a prophet, what type of jobs or what type of roles do you think people would be in if they were a prophet? I want to hear some ideas.
I do pretty well with the sales side of that one.
Sales side, yes. Good call, yes. You just got to buy it. It's the last one on the sales floor, yeah. Any other ideas? Where a prophet, sorry?
Team lead.
Sure. You could have a leader in where you work at Warren Electric, and they kind of are a prophet by how they kind of assertively speak to you and give direction. Sure.
Law enforcement?
Sure. Law enforcement, absolutely. You just kind of have to say it how it is, black and white, and you got to buy it, or yeah. Okay.
Politicians.
Politicians. Very good. Yes. Very good. Yeah, I will say that I have some prophets, friends that are prophets in my life, and they have a variety of different roles. So like, not one person just does. Not one of all my friends have the same role in life, but they do have the same gift, and you can tell by how they interact with you. You know if you have a prophet in your life, in your family, or friend group, or church, when they just kind of say it how it is, and not so bluntly to where they're being unloving, although that could be the negative side of it. So when you think about the prophet, the strength is you're getting truth out there, right? There's a lot of uncertainty and lies in our world, and so a strength of a prophet is like, we need people to just say how it is, and we need those people. Although on the flip side, the weakness can be you can also like really step on people's feet the way you say things, and so there's I'm sorry.
That's very easily done.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. So when we look at the prophet, then I want to bring back to the slide right here. Okay, we talk about some different ministries, right? And so when we're talking about ministries, we're talking about places where we can use God's gift, and this could be a variety of different things. So we're to care for the poor, widow, orphan, afflicted, broken-hearted, proclaim liberty to refugees, captives, freedom to prisoners, distributing of charities, person or people, praying and fasting, ministry of the word, testifying the gospel, ministry to the saints, ministry of reconciliation, and the ministry of the church. Brief me just going through. I'm not going to go on each one, but just know that there are a variety of ministries that can use these gifts. Right? We talked a little bit about where you work, but that doesn't need to be like necessarily where you work to use it. It can be a variety of different ways God can empower us to do those things. When we talk about using that gift, and in this one we're talking about the prophet, the effects we can gain wisdom and understanding, resist evil. Like when we're in the Spirit and we're using our gift, ultimately God is empowering us, and I feel like there's a bit of a shield or a momentum or this protection around us that I feel like if God's using us and employing us, that we are going to have a great effect on not just other people, but also our own hearts and ourselves. We'll talk about manifestations as well. So in 1 Corinthians, they talk about a variety of manifestations of how people can either show a word of wisdom. Like if you're a prophet, that's a big part. The word of wisdom and the word of knowledge, they take that word and they take that knowledge and they just need other people to know. And if people aren't getting it, sometimes that can be frustrating for the prophet. I'll say that also with gifts of healing and miracles, distinguishing of spirits and speaking or interpretation of tongues, that's a variety of different manifestations where the gifts can kind of live and ebb and flow in those different areas. But ultimately, when we talk about a prophet, I think that the people that are equipped with the prophet gift are going to have some form of role that they have a large amount of influence. So it could be in a leader form. You can show your prophetic gift just being a parent, and a variety of different ways. Any questions on prophet so far? Do you have any thoughts or discussion that you guys want to have on this one? Not yet? Okay. We're going to go back to the next one. So servant. So ultimately, the servant likes to serve other people, kind of straightforward in that way. And this can be in a variety of different ways. Servants typically put other people before themselves. So the strength of when I think of strengths of a servant, what I end up finding is that they truly care for someone so much they're just lavished with some form of action or praise or whatever that is. And the weakness though is that you end up really suffering from self-care or being able to care for yourself and your heart and your needs. Any other strengths or weaknesses that you guys can think of for the servant? If you guys know about that one.
This isn't so much about the person with the gift, but those of us who might believe in religious different way. I grew up pretty young. Like I was working at 12 years old, paying board pretty early. I became pretty independent. Hard for me to accept that. And I think that's where it can be frustrating for those who have this is often we feel vulnerable when others have that gift, and so for people with that gift that helps and they want to help, they can often be misinterpreted because the person who sees it feels you think I'm powerless, you think I'm weak. So understanding the interaction, I think, sometimes important for the person with the gift of serving.
Yeah.
That they can be this mistaken for like, this person doesn't want your help.
Sure.
So
Sure.
it's a weird interaction. It's hard sometimes to receive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would a servant be tempted to not recognize their own value or not see that what they do, they're doing it well and put themselves down and not recognize their value?
Absolutely, yeah. I would say that the servant can sometimes be so focused on others that a lot of times the spotlight on themselves isn't there. And that could come up, like I said, about the kind of self-care or making sure that, like, if you're serving others and caring for others so much, sometimes you don't make the time for yourself.
Think of a mother. I mean, that is the definition.
Sure.
And not, saying anything negative about a woman being,
Right.
But it's just, the mother's ability and, just the way her brain processes. It's give, do whatever it is kids need and so on and so forth. I mean, that kind of defines, servant.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Question, how does a person who is a prophet help someone who is a burned out servant that now is resorted to maybe selfishness or what have you as a protecting because they've always focused on that self-help has gone the wayside.
Yeah.
How does one help, such as a prophet, bring that servant back to their gift?
Yeah. When I think about how different gifts can interact, I do think that there's a very specific reason when God puts people in other people's lives. I had a guy from last class say that someone that was a servant, his mom that was a servant, just always felt like people were brought into her life for her to use that gift and to serve. And so I think along the same way, right, if you have a burnt out servant or someone that needs to serve and needs to give that to other people, but then they kind of lose heart. Maybe their relationship with God isn't where it could be, and that gift doesn't feel like it's as thriving as it was before, right? I think that there's an ability to someone like a prophet or like an exhorter, right, an encourager of sorts, to kind of basically refill the wind in their sails in a way. When I think about what a prophet can do, saying it how it is pretty big. It could be observational. It could be something like, hey, I will say this, that it comes way better from someone that you know than someone that you don't know. Someone just comes up and off the street and starts saying prophetic things to you and say, oh, you blah, 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 blah. That can probably turn them off. But if this is a friend, a family member, someone you just know in some capacity, that prophetic bluntness or assertiveness in what they're saying can really help almost jog the mind and heart of someone that knows that they're a servant. I think that it all comes down to if you believe something to be true by seeing it observationally, like you see something like you're not how you normally are right now, what's going on? Or is your relationship with God where it should be? Or kind of just saying it how it is, or maybe how you see it. And are you speaking from a prophet point of view right now, or a servant point of view?
Prophet point of view.
Yeah.
My wife being the servant, she's quite burned out by my bluntness and,
sure.
and me going too far one way. So she's starting to become, and I know the reasons behind it, but starting to become more bitter and more into self-help and less to others. And I see what my downfalls are, but how to encourage her back to, I think that's where her heart is.
Yeah.
But I think she's felt used and abused for so long that she no longer kind of has that drive.
Sure. Are there? I'm curious, and I love discussion. Is there any other prophet in the room, or someone that you feel like you just kind of say it out as, and you're okay?
Bad.
What's that?
Like bad.
Bad. Okay. So, if to the prophetic people in the room, the people that you feel like that is your gift, how can you say something in a way that doesn't step on someone else's feet?
I don't.
See, no, I've struggled with that for years, and the way it comes out is I'm kind of beating around the bush and kind of going down rabbit trails, and then nothing gets accomplished.
Yeah.
If I say it the way it is, then it's like, all right, here it is. Watch for the reaction.
Yeah.
But it's kind of you go down one path and you end up hurting someone. You go down the other path and nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And nothing gets accomplished because now you're 3 hours into the conversation and no one knows what you're talking about anymore.
Yeah.
I kind of preface the responses with, you need to know up front if you want my true opinion or true response, then I'll proceed. Otherwise, you don't want me to answer this question.
Sure.
And good or bad, but I am that person, and if you don't genuinely want my response, don't ask.
Yeah.
I usually open up with something along the lines of, you know I love you, right?
They know that something's coming when you preface it with that.
Yeah, it's coming out, whether you want to hear it or not.
Sure.
But it's everything that I'm going to say is it's out of love and out of growth. How can we help you rise up to the occasion?
Yeah. The humbling part about being a prophet is that just because you say it loud and proud doesn't mean they're going to get it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that in the moment they have to agree with you and say, oh, honey, you're so right. But it could be something that you planted a seed. Okay, and that seed can grow in God's timing. If she pursues God in the way that would let that seed grow, then you've done your part. You're there to say it, but you don't necessarily know if it's going to take full effect right away. It might take a little bit of time. And it's humbling. It's going to take patience.
You don't have that either.
And really, all our job is to plant the seeds. That's as far as we need to go. Just plant the seeds and let it be watered and watch it grow.
Absolutely.
But could it be, so this is all given by God.
Yes.
So it's under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
That's going to be delivered.
Yes.
Could a prophet be misled and speak out of bounds because they're in a habit of speaking in such a way that they becomes a prophet of destruction?
I would absolutely agree. I think that there are ways to use gifts that are for God's glory and with the Spirit, and then I think there are ways that we end up doing it selfishly. And we know, oh, I'm a prophet, so I'm just going to say it like it is without necessarily maybe consulting with God first or making sure that we are filled with the Spirit as we're saying it. And when I say, filled with the Spirit, I mean, God, if God's in us, God's in us. But our heart behind it can waver. Our heart behind it can change.
I agree. You have to find the right words to say it. Because if you just come out and say it bluntly, they might just be turned off and go the other way.
Yeah.
You have to know the situation, what's going on, and then you have to have that compassion in your heart, and still be straightforward and bring out the answer that they're kind of looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll say too, when you look back at this slide, you're saying it like it is. You're challenging. You're looking for conviction and everything like that. Repentance. Got that, right? But again, none of that necessarily says that they have to agree with you. None of that has to say that they need to do something about what you said right then. So focus on planting that seed, and then, yeah.
I think what makes it even more difficult is society nowadays has really perverted the prophet and the servant and made it something that is wrong. That you For example, looking at societal views, if you disagree, then you hate. So if you don't agree with this prophet per se, then you are the enemy, and your voice carries no weight whatsoever. And that is extremely destructive to even our understanding of spiritual gifts in general.
Yeah. So these gifts, these gifts are given by God. So when these gifts are being experienced or felt or used with someone that maybe isn't with God, it can come off as X, Y, or Z, like you don't care, you're judging this, that, and the other, right? And I have no doubt in my mind that, the speaker said before about being the salt of the earth and how like we are there to truly make others thirst for God. So sometimes that thirst doesn't even necessarily need to be pleasant. Like it can come off like a prophet, and then later on they whatever, and they think more about it. But in the moment it can come off rough. Yeah.
Should have a disclaimer on there to learn people skills.
How many times can you plant that seed? You know what I mean? That's another thing that
You don't stop.
Yeah, you have to plant that seed over and over. I mean, I've learned, I'll use my kids.
Sure.
How many times do you have to tell a child to do something before they get it in their head? No, they don't. I'm 25 years old, they're going to figure it out themselves.
Sure.
But in the back of their mind, the kid realizes, hey, this is exactly what Dad was telling me when I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it's...
You're not always planting in fertile soil.
Right.
Exactly.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I did the same.
Might be just planted on a rock and it's not going to happen.
Right, absolutely. In the essence of time, I'm going to go back to servant real quick. I just want to camp here for a little bit longer. Think about your heart behind the gifts, okay? If God gives us a gift to use, there's a way to use it in a good way, and then there's a way to not use it in a good way. How could someone feel like a servant is using it negatively? What's something that could come up where it's like...
Avoiding responsibility.
Okay, sure. So they could be so focused on serving others and being in their gift that all of a sudden they're not doing the responsible things that they need to in their life. Passing blame, sure.
And the neglect that they put on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Not doing it for the glory of God.
Absolutely, yeah. When I think about serving, I think of, negatively, manipulation. I think that if you do something for someone, the negative part of that would be you wanting something in return for a selfish reason. And God wants us to just give and not expect anything back.
Would this be an example of that, like someone who serves, but they get critical of other people that they feel they're not serving like they should? Why don't they do this? I've always got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a servant negatively could be that they're getting taken advantage of, because they're always the ones that are willing to help and do what needs to be done, but they don't really get the recognition they deserve sometimes.
Yeah.
As far as the servant goes, I think I've seen a lot that have been burnt out, and sometimes if they feel they fall into codependency or they've lost a choice, sometimes planting the seed that they have a choice, I think helps a lot.
Yeah.
Because I know when somebody takes my choice away, man, I'm stuck.
Feel powerless.
Even with
Don't
the
have a
choice, I may choose this way, but
Sure.
still, I need a choice.
Yeah.
And sometimes with my children, the answer you is sometimes I act as the prophet instead of a prophet.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
I think I'm the prophet.
Right.
Well, no, I'm a.
Right.
Yeah, but you are the prophet in your house. You are the leader of your home. That is the man's job in the household.
When I think about, when you said about being burnt out, all of these gifts can have an aspect of being burnt out, and we don't want to use them in the right way. When I think about being burnt out, I think you need to take a step back, without bumping into that, take a step back and redefine or reaffirm yourself with the truth of why you have the gift in the first place. Remind yourself, where did it come from? Remind yourself, why do I have it? Right? when you get those values back in place, when you get those beliefs back in place of how they should be used, where it came from, and all that, I think some of that burnt outness of the world will hopefully slowly shave away, melt away.
I think if you go through the other roles and the truth that goes through all of these, and it's like, why do we misuse them? And there's a very good book by a Christian guy, Townsend, and he co-writes with somebody else, but the book's called Boundaries. Okay, yeah. It's really insightful. It's why don't we say no? Why do we become overbearing when we're doing it for our own ego? And whether you're prophet, servant, teacher, every one of these says in the Bible, the gift of the prophet is subject to the prophet. That when God gives that gift, He doesn't take it back, so you can misuse it. There's times in the Old Testament where they tell one prophet to go home the wrong way and he gets eaten by a lion because another prophet lied.
Right.
So God gives the gifts and He doesn't take them back, and we can misuse them. So it's really good, I think, to get those insights from that. That book's very helpful.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
I think a lot of times with the servant, their mindset also is, I'm stuck here, this is where I'm at. Where else, where can I grow from this, just because this is all I know? And sometimes with the lack of, let's just call it a lack of having an open mind, sometimes you just need to consider that there might be another way. So I think that's where the prophet can actually come in, and whether it's encourage the servant, what is it that you want? So it's not like, hey, I've got my way and you need to do it my way.
Right.
Find out what is it truly that the servant is looking for, or anybody, what are you looking for in life, and how can we help raise you to that level that you want? Keeping in mind that it's all for Him.
Sure. Sure. Move on in the essence of need of time here. Teacher. So when you're a teacher, how many people in the room do you think or know that you have the gift of a teacher? Okay, you listen to the room. Okay. So when I think about, and correct me if I'm wrong, teachers or people that know of teaching, but when I think about my gift, and I think about the strength, I think it's almost like a less assertive prophet. And it might be something where maybe it's a little bit more discussion based than just kind of being prophetic and giving that, and hopefully they take it in a way. At least for me. What are your thoughts on that? People that yeah.
Yeah, I'm always I think that's my gift, and when I'm done approaching somebody or addressing somebody, I always do it in a way that I try to be very tactful. I don't have any sense of blunt force. I don't think I've ever done that in my life. It's all just strategy, say it the right way so that they'll perceive it, so they perceive it the way I want them to perceive it, and won't be offended or take it the wrong way.
Yeah.
I like being a teacher because I like to do the research. I like to know that what I'm saying is right.
Yeah.
And I do kind of marvel with the prophets sometimes that they just say something, amazing right throughout the hat.
Sure.
You make me all that work.
You're researching, you're formulating the best outline ever, and then all of a sudden the prophet just bang you. So when I think about the flip side of the coin, I feel like in the ways of both the prophet and the teacher, in ways I feel like a decent amount of like mind think or logic. While it is in the spirit, I think there's a lot of like logicality behind it, and so sometimes that can be void of emotion and feelings. And so sometimes the people you might be saying the best thing ever, and it's like, wow, this piece of information is so good, but you're not saying it maybe in a way that it can kind of
conviction.
What's that?
It lacks conviction.
Sure. It could be something where you're just kind of saying the words, but you're not really doing it in a way that is kind and loving. Because even the prophets, even that rhino on the first screen, that doesn't mean that you have to be so blunt to where you're blasting people off the room. You're hopefully doing it in an assertive, loving way. Right? There's a way to say it a couple different ways there.
One of my biggest issues with being a teacher that I found, especially in soul winning,
that because I've done the research, because I've gone through this, and I enjoy the debate, the argument, that then I feel that it's my job to actually convict these people to get saved, to believe in the Holy Spirit. It's not.
Yeah.
And as you stated with the prophet, we plant the seed, God gives the increase.
Yes.
And it's taken me years to sit back and realize that I'm only there to give a message.
Right.
Whether they accept it or not is up to them. And it's up to God to give the increase. So all I can do is not allow knowledge to puff me up and sit there and say, I've researched this, I know, you should be following me.
Yes.
Just to sit back and say, this is the message, and I'll let God lead you. And if I walk away from here and you're not saved, you haven't accepted God, you haven't changed your behavior, that's on you, that's not on me.
Yes.
It's hard not to though, because you feel so passionate about that.
Well, agreed. You've researched it, you're passionate, you think, I know best, but honestly, I don't. That's God. When we do that, we are now trying to supplant God and say, we're in that role, and we're not.
Right.
You gotta know your audience.
True,
You
absolutely.
You can't expect, like when you're talking to a non-believer.
Right.
I heard it once really well, like you can't expect a heathen not to be a heathen.
Sure.
And it's hard to, talk to them about certain issues because a lot of them are hard issues.
When I think about my role at Goodwill, so I work with a demographic or a population where, I mean, mind you, everyone's different, right? I work with people with different ability or varying abilities, right? And so many times when I teach, I can't teach the same way every single time. I have to be able to adapt. If I see a room that's fallen asleep, I need to be really energetic and be really interactive. If I see a room that's almost looks down on themselves or something like that, I end up more on the encouraging side. So I think that there's a way to adapt in teaching that can really help, like you said, your audience. Yeah.
I think teacher can get a little bit more into the head knowledge and forget about the propheticness of God and the relationship and be more focused on study-based knowledge and then lacks the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe come across as condescending at some points as well. The knowledge gives me power over you because you're not as smart as I am.
Right.
I had somebody call me coldly rational.
Coldly rational?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got something over there.
I'm saying that people are in different walks of life and different information. I'm like a servant, and if they don't know where I'm sitting, coming from, you can take it the wrong way, but you're still doing stuff for God.
Yeah, yeah.
All of Him.
You do your amount of the work, your due diligence, and God does the rest. So like we talked about the seed, we talked about this. Every gift, in a way, can actually make sure that every gift needs to keep that in mind. That your gift is really only, God working through you. It's not just you. It's God working through you. And the motivations behind it can get muddied when we become selfish or manipulative or what have you. Any other thoughts on teachers or any other ways that you guys are using kind of a teacher in your life?
Well, it's very rewarding when you see somebody start to get it.
Yeah.
Very disheartening when you see them not get it, but again, that comes into all the different things we talk about already. It comes into people skills. Are you connecting with them?
Right.
Christ emphasized that.
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. And he showed it.
So talking about the exhorter, the encourager, this is someone that uplifts someone else. A lot of times I feel like exhorters can have the strength of seeing people when they really need that word of encouragement. So it can be less on the logical side and more on like the heart feeling side of kind of seeing where someone's at, meeting them where they're at, and then kind of uplifting them through it.
This is the one we're fun.
It's warm and fuzzy. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. In a sense, yeah. Let's call it warm and fuzzy. That's good. Sometimes with the exhorter, I will say that if there's another side of the coin where it's more on the negative side of being used, it's almost like the servant in a way where I feel like sometimes you can encourage someone else for your own personal gain. right? You want something back. So similarly, that's just one side, one thought. Any other thoughts about strengths and weaknesses of an exhorter, from what you understand?
Could exhort someone that's headed down the wrong path.
Interesting. Yeah, you could be given, if you're not in the Spirit, if you're not walking with God in a way that He's empowering you, you could exhort someone in the wrong direction, or exhort someone to continue in the wrong direction. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. You know exactly what to say to build somebody up. When you feel scorned, you know exactly what to say to bring them down.
Wow. Yeah.
That's true.
That gave me chills, man. That was good. Really good. So another hand.
I was going to say the world is a great place to knock people down. The
Yeah.
world is always knocking, in the process of trying to conform. Because we're always in the work of, could be evil, to
Sure.
conform us into something we're not.
Yeah.
So to have an encourager, to be able to see through that, to be able to build someone up, is an incredible gift. Because like I said, it's all about conforming in the world today.
Right. Move on in a moment, but I do want to say that the exhorter too, big part of it is relationships. So if you get those people that really you feel a connection with, and they can help encourage you through a story or through something, you're going to feel that relationship. The one with fuzzies. Yeah.
Do you see a lot of the servant, with like the exhorter trait? Those that are constantly giving.
Sure.
That's a lot of times those that do give, that is encouraging to other people. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Can you're saying that if a server is serving someone, pushing someone, what they need, focusing on them, you're saying, could that also encourage them? Could that exhort them? Like almost like does it split off into different things?
Kind of they intertwine with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And two, I mentioned this in the first time, so forgive me for the repetition, but I'll say that, can you imagine a world full of just prophets, or just servers, or just one gift? It wouldn't work. The world wouldn't work the way God wants. That we all have different roles and different ways that God uses us. And I'll say, like, in that way, that just because you believe that you are an exhorter doesn't mean that when you encourage someone, it also is a form of like hinging on like mercy, or kind of meeting somewhere where someone's at, or teaching in a way where you're encouraging, but with knowledge that you have, so on and so forth, right? A great point, absolutely.
I was just gonna say, my youngest daughter has got this like mega, and her biggest thing is she asks such great questions. Like even her friends' parents tell us like we miss her so much. She's down in Madison studying law. But when she's confided in me, she said, nobody asked me those questions. Because she feels like people's pain so much. Her questions are incredible, and I even forget one, so I always, when I'm talking to her, I try to because she can get me talking about myself like that. But I think one of the things with exhorters, they long to also find people that will empathize with them when it's hard.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things she does when she feels defensive, she turns the questions back on people, so she inadvertently doesn't let people in because she's so good at feeling their pain.
Yeah.
Questions, so.
All right, and since time, again, I'm really bad at talking too much, so if you have questions on any of these, and I feel like we didn't go into enough, please stay and we can, we'll talk during lunch. I'm going to eat some food too. So, the giver and the leader and the mercy. We're going to I'm going to relate giver to serving. What I'll say is that the giver, again, is the kind of that selfless gift where you're giving, you're serving, you're focusing on other people to get the spotlight. A lot of givers, when you talk about investments, could be the stewardship and the way that you are investing in other people's lives and your own life. Any thoughts on giver briefly? The leader, when I see leaders, it's almost like a mix of, like prophet. You kind of have to say it how it is. But the leader, ultimately, you're trying to organize. You are trying to lead other people. When I think about what a leader is, I think about empowerment. I think, in a way, You're taking the ability that maybe you have and you are giving it to someone else for them to use, and you lead them through it. It's not just about leader, you're the boss, you say what it is, but you want to make sure that you are empowering other people. Of course, sometimes the negative part of that is that you can step on other people's toe, you can kind of be abrasive with how you lead them. Mercy, very similarly to exhorter in a way, a lot of the feelings, a lot of the warm and fuzzies, the meeting people where they're at, kind of down to earth. I've seen mercies that truly feel more emotion than I do for the given thing that I'm going through. And that is something that I feel like is hard to really explain other than that's how God has gifted them, truly. So what I want to do, I want to briefly mention again that all of us are gifted in different ways, okay? And I know we spent a little bit more time on others, and I really, really, really value the discussion because this isn't just about me standing up here and talking, it's about all of us talking together. So I want you to please continue these discussions. If you have more questions, you can stay, we can meet at lunch. But ultimately, I want to give you this information here. I do not teach this class. I am just giving the information for Ben today. Ben is the guy to go to if you want all of these resources extensively, where you're not just spending 45 minutes today, you are spending many hours and days into this later, okay? So please contact Ben Lenz if you are interested in learning more on how to use your gift and go through the class to get the curriculum and the resources. We have his Gmail right there, benlenz@gmail.com, or you visit the site there with a lot of resources. Again, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to stay and we can talk. Otherwise, you guys have a great rest of your day, all right?